Hey guys, I'm Tim White, Bushcraft, and tomorrow, starting early in the morning, I'm going to make some venison jerky, and I thought I'd bring you along. So the first step in any meat processing or cooking is cleanliness, and the first thing we're going to do are take these nice hindquarters that were harvested this morning and wrapped up, put in the refrigerator. We're going to clean the sink, we're going to wash them down real good, and then we're going to get them on a soak. So the first thing we're going to do is we've cleaned out the sink. We're going to take a good scrubbing pad and some soap and water, and we're going to clean the sink out. So let me get that done, and then we'll get our soak ready. Stand by, I'll be right back. And we'll get some cold water going here, and the next step in the process is to go ahead and wash our meat down. This meat was dressed in the field and quartered up on the back of a truck, so it's got a little bit of dirt and debris in it and a little bit of hair. So we're going to go ahead and wash that off, get it nice and clean, and then move that over to our soak that we're going to use to soak it down tonight. So let me get this all hosed down, each individual piece, and I'll be right back. Alright, next step in the process is I've taken 1 cup of salt, and I used this right here, canning salt, but you don't have to. Whatever salt you have on hand is fine. I took a pitcher of boiling water, added the salt, stirred it up, and then dumped in a cold pitcher of water once the salt was melted. So we have that in. The next step is to go ahead and add our meat to this pot. So I'm going to go ahead, put a shoulder blade towards the back. Hind quarter next. And this is going to be a process that's going to take us a little while. Tonight we'll soak this, and then tomorrow, and you know what, I'm going to go ahead and soak those tenderloins while I'm at it. And they'll be good to go fresh in the morning for breakfast. Alright, so we've got all of that in there. Now I'm going to pour off a little bit of this water because it's almost to the top, but we're going to go ahead and ice that down first to start the cooling process. So let me grab some ice. And I got my ice here, but you know what? Before I start digging in there, I've handled that meat again, so let me wash my hands real quick. Okay, now that I've got my hands washed, I'll go ahead and start adding some ice to this, and we're just going to fill this up with ice. And then once it cools down, we'll pour some of the water off, fill it back up with ice, and then I'm going to set this in the refrigerator and let this meat sit in this ice water overnight. Okay guys, the only thing left is once this ice melts, like I said, I'll pour off some of the water and get it back down just a couple of inches where I can put some fresh ice on top of that again, and I'll set that in the refrigerator out in the garage and let that set overnight. This is a brining process and it has a couple of purposes, but the main thing that you want to remember whenever you're working with meat, especially something that you harvest yourself, is that cleanliness. Make sure that all of your equipment, everything that's going to touch that meat, including your hands, is cleaned and sanitized, and you redo it at each step during the process. And we're going to have some really good venison jerky when all this is said and done. So I'll see you again tomorrow, and we'll go along with the next step in the process. I'll see you then. Okay, it's been 5 hours with these puppies in the freezer. And they are not frozen solid, but they are pretty solid. Solid enough, I think, that we can cut them and start slicing these things up. Now, Consistency with the thickness of the slices is pretty crucial, but it's not an absolute science. I don't have a professional slicer. I'm just using a nice, real thin blade. This is a high carbon butcher knife, something of a decent size, and it's the thinnest butcher knife that I have. And I'm just going to come in here and try to do nice thin slices. You can see the thickness of that compared to the thickness of the knife blade. And I'm going to just keep doing that until I get to the bone, and then I'll start working around the bone. And then once we have enough of this sliced up, we'll go ahead and we'll mix up our marinade that we're going to season this in for a little while before we start cooking it. Alright, pardon the fire radio going off there. We'll cut that off, and I'll finish slicing this up and I'll be right back. Okay, 1 hindquarter is cut up. Time to make up the sauce. So we have 1 bottle of soy sauce. One bottle of teriyaki sauce, and this one is 10 ounces. The soy sauce was, let's see, I don't see how much it is. 15 ounces. This is a very simple recipe. Makes a great marinade. I just took those little, add a dash, and this is liquid smoke. Now this stuff is pretty potent, and I only add about a half a bottle. And make sure you shake it up, and that is about a half a bottle. And now what we're going to do is each one of those bottles, I'm going to add the same amount of water to this mixture. And I'm going to go ahead and add some, this is coarse ground black pepper. And I like to do about that much. I like that peppery flavor on my marinade, as well as some of it will stick to the venison as it's cooking. So let me fill these up with water, and then I'll stir this up, and then we'll be ready to marinate our meat. Okay, so to marinate the meat, I use a stainless steel milk bucket that I also use as a pot when I'm camping. You don't have to use this. 1 gallon zip top bags work great, but the process goes like this. I take a cup of the marinade, I put that in the bottom, and then I just start layering the meat in there, and I put the meat in until the juice or the marinade is no longer coming over top of the meat. And I'm going to get in there and mix this stuff up, adding it as I go. You don't have to be, you know, real ginger with it, but you need to add it a slice at a time, because you don't want, you want the marinade to come in contact with the meat all the way around, because this is a fast marinade. This is not something that you have to let set for 24 hours or overnight in the refrigerator or anything like that. This meat is partially frozen, and by the time it's thawed out, it'll be ready to go. An hour in this marinade gives it a nice flavor. 3 hours is great. There's nothing wrong with that at all. But after 3 hours, anytime after that, you're not really getting any more flavor in that meat, I have found. I see no difference between 3 hours and 24 hours of marinade time. And that's one of the things I like about it, is this is something that we can go ahead. It's somewhere around 7 o'clock in the evening right now, and I'm one of those people who don't go to bed until late. So by the time this stuff is marinated up, the oven is all heated up and ready to go, it'll be time to put it on and let it do a nice slow cook tonight. So that's one hind quarter, and that's what it looks like in the marinade in the bucket. The marinade is equal with the top of the meat, and I'm going to do this other hind quarter and do the exact same thing. It'll require the rest of that marinade, and then I'm going to take that bucket and set it off to the side, and then I'll show you how I hang it to start the drying process next. Okay, so here's what it looks like in the stainless steel bucket. Do you see that the marinade is all the way over to the top? And you know, you always wind up with some of these chunks right around the bone and stuff that are not really sliced right for the jerky. Don't worry about it. Just go ahead and throw that stuff in there and get it down in that marinade and let it soak. And we'll let that cook along with the marinade. We'll let that cook along with the jerky, and that's going to be really nice for some like chunked up meat to go with some rice or something like that. It just has a great flavor. Or you could just cook it down longer and have it just like the jerky. I'm going to just put a lid on that. That's just a dog bowl that fits on top of the stainless steel bucket, just to keep anything out of that. And I'm going to go ahead and wash and get everything cleaned up and ready to get this stuff in the oven. I'll be right back. Okay, it has been hours, and this meat has been soaking in our marinade, and you can see it has changed colors. So we've got a nice set on that, and now it's time to move on to the actual drying process. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pour off this marinade, and if you had more hindquarter that you wanted to go ahead and make into jerky, you could save this and use it again. I've used it twice before with no problems. Of course it does reduce because some of it has soaked into the meat, but I've gotten 2 soakings out of it without any problem. I'm going to take a toothpick and come right in here about a 1/4 of an inch or so from the top of the meat, and just hang my pieces of meat like this. And I'll do that with the rest of them. But the first thing I want to do is pour this marinade off so that I can get as much of the liquid out of it as I can, so I don't make quite as much of a mess in the rack in the oven. So let me pour this off and we'll get to putting our toothpicks into this. Okay, I've got my pot right down here beside the oven door. I've pulled the rack out, and I've got my toothpick sitting here, and you notice I've got a nice landing pad of paper towels laid down. And what I'll do is I'll pull my meat out and just stick each piece of meat like this, and then I want to hang it on the oven rack. And this allows me to get a lot of meat cooked at one time. And just try to offset those so that they're not pressing up against each other, and just continue and fill that rack up. Get as much of it on there as you can, and you'll notice that I've coated the bottom of the oven floor there with a good layer of aluminum foil, and I've run that up on the sides and up in the back and the front, so that as this venison sits here and drips, it's not going to create a lot of work for me as far as burning to the bottom of the oven. I'll be able to just take that aluminum foil out, discard that, and really cut down on my cleanup time. Now I'm going to try to hang the biggest pieces first, to try to utilize as much space as I can within my oven, but yet also not let it be touching the bottom. If I get a piece that's touching like that, I just pull that off, and that'll be some of the smaller pieces that we can deal with later. If you happen to get a piece that's got some of that white sinew on it, that's a great place to stick that toothpick through. Once again, try to have it to where it's not pressing up against each other. It's okay if it touches. You just don't want to jam it on there. The oven will hold a lot of meat, but we're probably not going to get all this on there, and that's one of the reasons we retained that marinade, so we can put any of it that we need to back in soak. Okay guys, you get the idea. I'm going to continue to do this. I'm going to move you in here just a little bit so you can get a closer look in the oven. There you go. I'm going to continue to fill that up, and then I'll be right back. Alright guys, that's it. We're going to set the oven for 200 degrees, and we're going to let that run for about the next 6 hours. We'll check it every couple of hours tonight as it cooks, but in the morning we should have an oven full of good fresh jerky. Alright, there we go. Now I won't bother to wake you up every time I check it tonight. You need to get some sleep, so why don't you do whatever it is that you do during little breaks like this. I'll be back in just a couple of seconds with the end result. Well, it's been 8 hours since we started the process in the oven at 200 degrees, and I've been taking some of this meat out, the thinner slices, as it started getting done. But at the 8 hour point, I'm ready to bring it all out now. Now I did cut this oven off a little while ago, so it's not so hot, but you have to use caution doing that. And now we can just grab these pieces of meat by the toothpick and just pull them off or drop them through, and we'll remove those. Now you want to be cautious as you do that to make sure that you completely remove all of the toothpicks, that they don't break off and you leave any inside the meat. If you happen to break some off like that, yeah, that's okay. You just need to snack on that one and go ahead and get rid of it. Now some of these larger pieces that we had that they come off close to the bone that we decided not to slice off real thin, this is all good. It's not jerky, but this will be the first stuff that we eat, and this stuff is it's what I use in rice or noodles or something like that as I'm cooking up some of my other dishes. So as I pull that off, if it's a little bit thicker or those chunks like that, I just set that off to one side so that I can put that in a zip top bag and go ahead and utilize that in the next couple of days. So let me get the rest of this out of the oven, and we'll have a few closing remarks. Okay, so there's the product. One baking sheet full of venison jerky. So let's talk just a little bit about a couple of the options that you have. I used an oven. You can also use a dehydrator. That would be perfect, but my dehydrator is small and it wouldn't hold that amount of venison. So why did I do all of that at one time? There's a couple of options. It's hunting season and I just wanted it. But let's say you have an opportunity to get some venison and you just don't have the freezer space for it. Well, we've just reduced that deer down to something that I can put in a couple of 1 gallon zip top bags. We used the back strap for a breakfast and a supper, so that was taken care of, and the front shoulders We cooked up, we used part of it as barbecue, and we had about 50% of that left over, and we can have that as a shredded type meat that we're going to have with tacos later on tonight. So in the course of 2 days, we were able to utilize that entire deer in a way that we can have it for later on. Now, I know some of you are going to ask, how long will this last? Well, that depends on the thickness and the amount of moisture that you get out of that jerky. If you can take it and bend it and it's done all the way through, but it doesn't snap in half, it'll last a good long time in just a Ziploc bag or a quart jar at room temperature. But I've never had to really worry about it because we eat it up so fast that we've never had to worry about it going bad on us. I do understand a lot of people who do this and store it for later on. They either put it in the refrigerator, which is what I do. I cook it up, and anything I don't eat in the first couple of days goes in the refrigerator at the end of each day while we've got it out in the field. And like I said, within 3 or 4 days, we're eating it, so it's all gone and I don't have to worry about it. But people who use dehydrators and they want to store it for a longer period of time use a vacuum sealer, and they have a lot of success with that. I would encourage you to check out some of those channels on using vacuum sealers to process or to store your game long term. I've had a lot of success with it myself. As far as the hanging it in the oven, it is a mess. So make sure you do your liners well, and make sure you clean that back up before you get ready to cook in it next time. It'll make life around the house a whole lot easier. As far as hanging it, the toothpicks, round versus flat, the round work a lot better. I have tried taking the toothpicks and soaking them in water, but I think because the temperature is so low and we're cooking it for 6 to 8 hours, that the toothpicks just dry out, and I really saw no advantage to soaking those toothpicks first. Just be careful when you take them out. Make sure you remove all of that toothpick. You don't want to be eating a piece of jerky and having a wood char or splinters go up into your gum. That could be awfully unpleasant. That's the only disadvantage that I found to hanging it like that, other than the mess that it creates in the oven. As far as the marinade, this turns out to be kind of light, which is the way I like it. I like to be able to taste the venison and a little bit of the gaminess in the jerky. But if you want it stronger, if you like more of that teriyaki flavor, just don't water it down and marinate it for the full 4 hours, and you'll get a lot more of that flavors of the soy and the teriyaki coming through it. As far as the pepper, you can add as much of it as you want to whatever your taste is. I go a little conservative with it. Just because when I'm out in the field and I'm utilizing it hunting, I don't want to have to be consuming a lot of water while I'm out there. I try to keep myself hydrated, but I don't want something that's going to cause me to really drink a lot. It could have several disadvantages to me while I'm out there. So that wraps up this video. Thanks for joining me. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm going to definitely enjoy this venison jerky, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Until then, I'm Tim Langston with Red Dog Bushcraft, home of global safety and survival. God bless y'all. And that's a wrap on the jerky.